At the age of 16, started using crack, and shoplifting came in to get money to purchase it. Started committing other crimes. I was introducing myself into police stations, and all along it was just for the chase. Commit a crime, get the money, buy the drugs, go up there, come back down, go out again. I would do geographicals, move left, right, different towns, come back. And the common denominator of all the moves was always the crack. Doesn't matter if I stopped it for 2 years or 6 months. Whenever I took it, the same consequences happened. Waking up and not having to go and get a drug to feel normal. That's true freedom.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode, I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction, and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Elena. Hi, spiritual seekers. Welcome to this episode of 12 Steps and 12 Questions. Just as a reminder, 12 Steps and 12 Questions is for all 12 steppers, and I'm always keen to hear from all fellowships. We haven't had any gamblers or nearly enough food addicts yet. So if this is you or someone you know, reach out to me on 12steps12questions@gmail.com or join our WhatsApp group. All links are in the show notes. And with that, let's get to my guest for today. Elena, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Elena. I am a drug addict. I have been in recovery. This will be my 18th year. Where do you want me to start?
With our first question, that's where we're going to start.
Okay.
The first question that I ask every guest on this pod is, Elena, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
In terms of?
Well, adverse childhood experiences, they're defined as growing up with parents who were alcoholics or addicts, having any trauma that you incurred in your life. Did you grow up in a household which was struck with either loss or poverty or any of those things?
Yeah. Funny that. No. My parents are still together. They've been married 60 odd years. I grew up in a loving home. There's no addiction in my family. My childhood was what you would call an average normal childhood. There was no abuse, no trauma of any sort. So I always ask myself, so how did this happen?
No, absolutely. And I've said this many times on here, this isn't because we take no position on whether this is genetic or whether adverse childhood experiences, make us addicts. It's just a good way of getting to know the person that I'm interviewing and for our listeners to gauge who you really are. So that's why why I ask for adverse childhood experiences. So what I'm hearing is you had a great home. Your parents. I love it when people are still together after 50 or 60 years. I mean, that is one of the sweetest things, right? Now, did you not have? I mean, you grew up in where? In London?
I grew up in Tottenham. Yeah. And I guess in Tottenham it was a very rough area, but there was literally no reason why my road led me to addiction.
Which is not the question I'm asking. I'm asking if you had a hard time when you were a kid with pretty much anything.
No, I didn't.
All right, amazing.
That's the thing.
Great.
The only thing I would say is I came out at the age of 18, but was that an issue in my earlier age? No.
No. And if you didn't, you just didn't. That's amazing.
Yeah.
One question I do have, though, growing up in Tottenham, in the 80s, I take it?
No, in the 90s.
Like in the 90s, okay.
Yeah.
What about racism? Is that something that you encountered at all?
No,
or not really?
because obviously growing up in Tottenham, it's predominantly people of colour.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really, my school was multicultural.
Yeah, wow.
We had a big mix of black, white, Asian, mixed race.
Yeah. So difference, you're just showing my age as well, how different it is to grow up in the 70s and 80s,
I was born in the 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
I was born in the 70s, and obviously I left school at 16, which would have been 1990. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great. Amazing. Really great. So let's get to our second question, our
Okay.
question 2, and that is, what did the moment you first got hooked, the fun times, what did that look like, if there were any? So here you are, you grew up in a loving home.
Yeah.
You, as you said, you grew up in a great school or in an environment where you felt not marginalized or weird about who you are, right? If I'm summing this up correctly. But at some point or another, something, a substance or a behavior came your way and you thought, oh, I love some of that. I'll have a bit more of that. What was that? How did that manifest?
I think at the time I would probably put it down to peer pressure, being around certain group of people that were doing things, and I didn't want to feel left out. Like, I'll give an example. So, for example, smoking a cigarette. So at 12 years, I started smoking cigarettes behind a shed at school, and it wasn't something I particularly liked, but everyone was doing it. And because I didn't want to feel left out, I too had a cigarette. And that's how my introduction into drug use started. So it was things like weed and ash. Lunchtime at school, we'd start smoking. And it wasn't a thing for me that I really enjoyed it, because I'd look at my friends and they would be giggling, laughing, having bongs. And I'd be total opposite. But because I didn't want nobody else to know I felt uncomfortable smoking weed, I just did it. So for me, it was more along the lines of wanting to fit in, not feel
wanting to belong.
The odd one. Yeah, not being the odd one that's not doing it.
Yeah. Okay. And so it sounds as if the first few times that you took drugs, you weren't having the best of time.
Not really, no. I think they were actually, because I suffer from this disease, obviously back then, I just thought, this is how I feel when I smoke weed or ash. I didn't understand how others felt differently. I didn't find anything quite funny, because I was actually it was quite the reverse, where I actually felt quite paranoid, and I couldn't understand everybody else's giggling. Do you see what I mean? So
totally, yeah. I smoked lots and lots, and was pretty much stoned throughout 15 to 20, pretty much every day, really. And how I have a brain cell left is really beyond me. But I do remember that sometimes, when you get paranoid on weed or hash, it can really take you and grab you. It's very, very, very unpleasant.
100%,
100%. It's really shit is what it is, And other times I'd be giggly and everything would be so incredibly funny and we'd be so creative, which of course we weren't, but it felt like it, So when did you start using other stuff then that later might have become a problem?
So, I started using hard drugs at a very young age. As I said, the weed and ash was from 12, 13. At the age of 16, I started dabbling in crack cocaine, and it was rife at the time. It was all around Tottenham, all around the areas, and a lot of people were veering into that avenue. And so from the age of 16, which is quite young, I started freebasing crack cocaine.
Talk to us a little bit about those first few times and what that felt like and what it did for you or to you.
So for me, when the first time I took it, I didn't actually get the effect, because I always say this when I do my share, is the person who gave me the substance was also an addict, and they gave me a pipe that didn't have anything on. So then I went out. Yeah, they gave me an empty pipe. So then I went out and sorted the drug myself. And for me, it just felt like freedom, euphoria, freedom, very quickly. That feeling of utter ease. That's probably the only way I could explain it. And then within a second, that feeling was gone. So to get the feeling back, you need to continue to take more.
So how long would it last? I've not smoked crack.
Probably say 10, 15 minutes.
Right. It's not very long, is it?
Depending I'm guessing if you had, let's just say you had £250 worth, then it would last you a lot more 15, 20 minutes, wouldn't it? But if you
No, that's right, of course.
But if you had one stone, then yeah, it would last that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The spiral with crack cocaine in the 90s was that it didn't last very long, and it was very expensive. So back then it was £25. So
one rock.
yeah, so £25 today, if you think about it, that was like 30 something years ago.
Bloody
that will
hell.
be the equivalent of about £65 today.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So
Definitely.
somebody at 16 to have that sort of money, it was unheard of.
Yeah. So I can relate this to, so I never took crack, although towards the very end of my using, when powder cocaine wasn't working for me anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just doing line after line, and, my hands got a bit shaky, but nothing else was happening. I didn't get that relief anymore. That thing inside, the
ease of comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm all right now. Things are okay. I did think to myself, I should, maybe I should try this, or maybe I should try heroin or whatever. And I was going to, but then thankfully I came into the rooms beforehand, But what I do know is that if I did a line, it wouldn't last much longer than 10 minutes either before I wanted another.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's the same sort of thing, I guess. It's just more intense. So it's probably 10 times more intense than having a life.
Yeah, I get that, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, of course, then the up, if the up is so intense, the down is equally intense, and the more you're going to go out and try and look for more. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, definitely. So you tried it a few times, you really loved it immediately, I take it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
After you had been given a full pipe and not an empty one. And then how did it progress? How quickly did it take you down? So remember, our question is, what at the moment you first got hooked, or the fun times look like? Were there fun times? Because for me, there was a long party time.
Probably from the age of 16 to the age of 17 would have been my short variation of party.
That's so little.
And then I got introduced to police stations and prisons.
Yeah.
Due to criminal activities. Do you see what I mean? So very short-lived. Very, very, very short-lived.
That would have, if in my, being who I am and all the rest of it, I would have probably picked up a quick resentment about this, that, I've been shortchanged, that I wanted to have more of a longer good time, But do you talk to us perhaps a little bit about what it was like then? So, you started, you were using, it was good fun, you were probably with a bunch of people, and then at some point you decided, your addiction decided that you needed to do something to get a bit more, Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, so for me, it was at the age of 16, starting using crack, and obviously I just left school. I'm not in any employment, so shoplifting came in.
Yeah.
Started nicking things to get money to purchase it. Started committing other crimes, and before you know it, I was introducing myself into police stations. And all along, it was just for the chase. So I would commit a crime, get the money, buy the drugs, go up there, come back down, go out again. So there wasn't any stopping. There wasn't any stopping. It was just like being, if you can imagine a mouse in a little wheel, you're literally just going round, money, buying it, maybe get nicked, maybe not, round and round and round.
Vicious circle, if ever there was
one. Yep. And that's how it go on.
No, please.
And that's how the decline started. So the crimes got bigger, the sentences got longer, and every time I went inside, I said, this time it's going to be different. I'm going to come out and I'm not going to do it, because my problem is not with the crime. My problem is that drug. Because I didn't understand back then that I suffered from an addiction. And it wasn't just physical, it was also a mental addiction.
Yeah.
Because if I was separated from it, which I was many times, separated for maybe a year, 2 years, what took me back to going to get another one
Yeah.
when I've just been clean or not used it for so long? So then I
course.
kind of realized it was actually something wrong with my mind. So I wasn't wired like other people.
Yeah. Now, nobody grows up to be in prison at 17 or 18. You come from a good home and all the rest of it, And what were your thoughts at that time, the first few times you found yourself in a prison cell or maybe in front of a judge, and then, I don't know, the first few sentences you got, which I assume weren't very, very long because you just entered that system.
Go on.
How did it feel? What was it
Well,
like?
The first prison sentence I got was actually 18 months. Quite long. First
Wow. Yeah,
17-year-old. And I did 7 months of that. Obviously, people who have been in prison would kind of relate to this, but you're away from your family, your friends. You're being told what to do, told when to wake up, told when to go to work, told when to go to sleep. If you get into any sort of trouble in there, then there's consequences. So it was more regimental. So I was one of those people that the minute I walked into a prison, I didn't take drugs. I just used exercise. And I was fine. And I didn't feel the need to use it. So that was what my little gateway was.
Yeah, so that's your survival mechanism in there. You had something that would keep you alive, and essentially, and you were able to keep your head down and do your time.
Yeah.
Our question 3 is, what were your worst consequences and finally your rock bottom? Now, I say this quite often, this might cover quite a large period of time, from... We are 18, 19 here maybe, to whenever you came into the rooms. But essentially what I'm asking for is your progression.
So I'd probably say I came out of prison at 18. And then I kind of realized crack cocaine is probably not something I need to be taking. So I tried for a little while, started smoking weed again. Even got myself a little job. But there was something missing. So by the time I got to 19, I was in another town. I was introduced to party drugs, and it was acid, ecstasy, speed.
Yeah.
So for a while, I was on a party scene. It was happy hardcore. I'd go raving every weekend. It was fun. Those giggles you talked about, I had that all the time with acid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was all right. So for a few years, that's what I did, and started selling that. So I didn't really have any downfall. But what happened to me is, because those drugs were not the drug of my choice, I always veered back. Even if it was for one day, I would always keep veering back to, okay, I'll just have a little session for one day. And then that session started to go to 2 sessions. Then it was a whole weekend. Then I would sell all the drugs I had to sell and buy crack with it. Then I'd be back to square one. I would do geographicals, move left, right, different towns, come back. And the common denominator of all the moves was always the crack. Doesn't matter if I stopped it for 2 years or 6 months. Whenever I took it, the same consequences happened.
Yeah. Let's slow this down for a second. So, in the happy party days that you talked about, there was some more of the good times, the fun times there was what I'm hearing the question too.
Yeah, because I lived in Leicester. I was just turning 19. The party scene was there. I met some great people. We used to sell speed and acid, and because we did that, we had it free. It was on tap. So I didn't want for it. So hence I would have an ounce or half ounce of whatever substance that I had at the time in my house. And it didn't give me the same effect as crack.
Yeah.
So I could have it in copious amounts and I was able to sell it. But this is where I'm going back to. So whenever those party scenes were very short lived, because I will still go back one day and smoke and then try to climb back the next couple of weeks, leave it out and then go back.
Yeah.
So I was never really completely not using it.
Yeah. It's this thing, isn't it? What we call our drug of choice or our drug of no choice. And
yes,
I suppose
of course.
both are equally right. I know, and I've said this quite a few times on here. I've used a whole lot of stuff over the years, of course, and it is always the uppers that really got to me, that I am most powerless over. As kind of jumping forward just a little bit here, as addicts in recovery, we know what we're most powerless towards, right?
Yes.
Obviously, we live a life of total abstinence because we have to, because every other drug will lead us to this particular one.
Exactly.
Right. So that is clear. But I do very much relate to this, that I was able for quite a long time to drink somewhat reasonably, right? And it not look like I had a massive problem, right? That would go on for a little while, but anytime I touched as an upper, so anything that is speed, pills, cocaine, crystal, any of those, I would lose it, right?
Yeah, that's the same sort of thing as well, because even though the speed and the acid, they're classed as uppers, after a while, they started having an adverse effect. So, example would be the funny, happy acid started to be nightmares, and I was having bad trips. So then I stopped taking acid. Then the speed, the come down would be depression. And then I thought, I don't like that either. So all the good times started changing for me.
Yeah.
And I never actually believed I was an addict because I could stop those different drugs. And when I say stop, and I mean, I had a bad acid trip. I never touched it again. Literally didn't touch it again. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. I literally could not wait until it was over. And when it was over, I didn't touch it again. So stuff like that always remained in my mind, because that always kept me out of 12-step, because I didn't believe I was actually an addict.
It gives you, what it does is it gives you a false confidence.
Yes, 100%.
It gives you that false confidence to kind of go, well, yeah, but I stopped that. So
yes.
What's the problem here? Nothing to see here. When really, the proof of the pudding would be that you stop everything, you just live a sober life. But that was never on the agenda, was it?
No, 100% no. And that's the thing as well, isn't it? So for addicts like myself, we seek out different avenues. So for me, when the acid and the speed stopped working, I was then introduced to harder drugs, which was heroin. That was another drug that I thought I'd never take. And again, I did take it, started smoking it, and that was probably, that added with crack cocaine is what brought me to my knees.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about that combination and how that came about. So you tried heroin for the first time. You'd been out of prison for a little while, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And I had been using crack on and off. And one of my friends said to me, you're always up. Try and relax. Have some of this. And it was a spliff. And inside it, instead of having weed, it had heroin in it. Do you know what I mean? But again, when you have that, it's the same sort of ease and comfort.
Just calming down.
Yeah, it just obviously comes with a habit that you need to completely keep feeding.
Yeah. How quickly did that come about, the habit?
I'd
the heroin?
probably say after about a week or two, because I always had it, I didn't understand what having a habit was like until I didn't have it. And I actually got ill. So I didn't understand withdrawals because I never had withdrawals. And then there was a drought in Leicester where I was at the time. And I started to feel a bit ill.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, I said, I don't feel too good. He went, oh, don't worry, you're just clucking. And that's how I kind of understood. And
What was
even
that
then,
moment, that realization, though? Because nobody wants to be clucking. Nobody wants to be
horrific.
addicted.
That was horrific. So for me, in my mind, it was horrific. And the only thing I knew to do, besides getting some more, was pack my bags and leave Leicester and go back to London, because heroin was not for me. And again, what happened for me was I packed my bags, moved to London, went to my mum's house, and I withdrawed on a sofa with weed for 10 days. And there's another example of why I thought I wasn't an addict. And then for a while, I didn't touch heroin either. Just didn't touch it. Just didn't.
This thing that you're talking about here was with me for so long and in so many ways. I drank heavily for a while, then stopped. I smoked cigarettes for a long, long time, then stopped. I took, at about 24, 25, I stopped using all drugs for a while. Yeah. And because this illness is full of contradiction and not linear, right? It doesn't go in a straight line like this. I would not ever believe that I might have thought I have a bit of a problem, like a gentleman's problem. Do you know what I mean? Right? Which is pathetic, really. But, I'd never thought that I was a full-blown addict, because addicts to me were people who live outside. They've got nothing, and whatnot. They look different, right?
Yeah, but it's also as well, you think about it, right? Coming from a 12-step perspective, it's not about the substance. It's about how our bodies react to that substance.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you a little short story. So I've got a friend. His name's and this is a true story. His name's Mark, and we both used to use heroin together. We both used to work at Sainsbury's. It was like 97, and on our lunch breaks, we'd go and buy heroin, smoke it, go back to work. Both held down our jobs, but we was using. This one day, there was a drought in London, and we couldn't get any. And me and him had been using probably for about 6 months every single day. And we was both ill. We was trying to score. We couldn't. We had to go back to work. And he turned around to me and he said, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not doing this no more. And he literally went back to work and he never touched it again. So you can imagine what happened to me. I clearly didn't go back to work. No. I went and found it. And then I carried on. And then what happened was I literally didn't go back to work. Ever. And to this day, he's not one of us. He still is in the same job where I left him all those years ago. You see what I mean? So that's an example of somebody who when they have a drug in their system, it doesn't affect them the way it affects me. So I'm sick. All I want is more to make me not sick. He's sick. All he wants to do is not touch it again, so I don't feel sick. You see?
Yeah.
So
it's such a brilliant,
crazy, isn't it?
Brilliant explanation, and shows you, because in real life, what it's like between someone who's a heavy user and someone who is an addict. And I had friends who were heavy users who, on the surface, almost looked a bit more, because they were able to take a bit more. Certainly at the beginning, they were able to do a bit more than I was or whatever. And you'd have pointed at that guy, right, saying, out of the three of you, or four, or however many we might have been that night, he's the addict. But when really the addict was me, even though he was using a bit more that night, because he's just a heavy user. And then the next day, he just went to work. But
Exactly. And
I couldn't.
And that's where the difference is it's our minds are believing the insanity that's going in our minds. So in my mind back then, it was no matter what, I'm going to get some. Yeah. That's all I care about. Do I care about the full-time job I've got? Not really, no.
No.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's something inside my mind that just doesn't switch back. Yeah. So that's where the difference is, you see?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. Beautifully explained. Let's circle back to the question, and that is how it progressed then, and how, you came to the rooms at some point. If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
So my progression, as I said to you, I used non-stop for 18 years. I started using 16, like I said, and I came into the rooms when I was 33. And I came into rooms, I'm not going to say I came in, it was a total accident. Somebody I knew, I was in prison at the time, and on the 17th of July, a whole load of us had used in the prison. And a friend of mine said to me, I'm going into rehab tomorrow. Do you want to come? My first thought was, no, not really. Not because I didn't want to stop, was because I knew if I went to the rehab, I wouldn't be able to use the gym. So I said, no. I said, but you have fun, take care, hope it works well. And then the next day, she got her bags and she went across to the rehab. And the only way we could see each other was by attending these 12-step meetings in the prison. So they had AA, CA, NA, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'd go to these meetings, I'd sit there, and I would listen to people sharing like what I'm sharing now. I'd listen to them, and my mind would just snap shut because I couldn't even comprehend someone saying that they were a year or 2 years without using. I couldn't understand, even though the only reason why I hadn't used them because there was nothing in the prison. Yeah. And the turning point came for me was on a Wednesday when Cocaine Anonymous, which is my fellowship, they came in through H&I to do service, and the person that they brought in was somebody I had used with. And the message was carried to me there and then because that person had been missing on the streets for years, and everybody thought she died.
She dead, yeah, of course.
But she literally got alive, got clean, and she was
really?
She
was living a normal life, got well, got a job, maybe met someone.
Right. And back then, it was, you're either doing life in prison or you're 6 foot under. There wasn't any, you got clean and you got a good life, because there was never any example of that. So when I saw her and she shared her story, I related to everything because some of the bits of her story, I was there with her. Do you see what I mean? And that was my introduction to the 12 steps.
It's a hugely powerful God moment, though, surely. I mean, we haven't spoken
100%.
about God yet. We'll come to it.
100%.
But even if you are not a believer, right, or even if you believe in, I don't know, accident and whatever, you would have, in that moment, kind of go, bloody hell, something's happening here because, this is a person you actually know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the majority of the meetings previously, I'd mucked around, I'd listened, or I'd just nicked coffee and some biscuits and went back. But when I saw her, I listened and I shared back for the first time ever. And I said, I thought he was dead. That's how I started my share. Do you know what I mean? And after the meeting,
Did she recognize you? I'm sorry.
Yeah, she recognized me.
Yeah. So you went up to her after the meeting.
Because remember, I'd been in, and also as well, she hadn't seen me for a long time. So she would have known me very slim, very gaunt looking from all the using. And I'd been away for a while as well. So after the meeting, I went up to her and I asked her, I said, oh my God, what happened? And she said, get to Bournemouth. And because I'd only surfaced around London, I thought Bournemouth was Spain. I was like, well, where's that? She was like, just go to Bournemouth. So the next day I went to my drugs worker in the prison, which this is another God moment, because I've never asked for help, ever. Because of all my experiences, like I've told you, where I thought I could control different things and I stopped. I didn't need help. I just needed a better chance. So I asked for help and I said, listen, I need to get rehab. I need some funding. And, yeah, they gave me funding. And, 3 months later, they released me into a 12-step program. Not in Bournemouth, mind you, in a place called Bognor. And, my
Also not
journey,
in Spain.
not in Spain,
Also
no.
not in Spain.
Yeah, but it had a beach.
It had a
So-
beach and starts with B, so
But a beach, but it had stones on it. So Bognor Regis was my introduction to 12 steps. I did a treatment center, which is 12-step based. We did step 1, 2, and 3. And then from there, I wanted to go to Brighton. I've always wanted to go to Brighton because I thought, I'm a gay woman. Brighton's the gay capital.
makes
Probably
sense.
be all right. And you know where they sent me? They sent me to Bournemouth. You see, another godman.
Yeah,
See?
yeah, absolutely.
And by the time I got to Bournemouth, I was 12 months. 12 months. Hadn't worked a step except for 1, 2, and 3. I went to a second treatment center, and there I mucked around a little bit. I think I got to my 6-week mark, and I thought, you know what? Shit, I need to do something because they're letting me out soon. And if I don't do something, I'm going to go back to what I know.
So you knew that what we call the window of opportunity is
Yes,
closing.
yes, I knew that my time there was finishing.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do something, I didn't listen, ask for help, what would happen is I'd get out and I'd go back to my old ways. So I spoke to my counsellor. I actually had a couple of friends who I'd met along my using who were also in Bournemouth who were clean. And I was introduced to my sponsor. She came to the treatment centre. She took me out for the day. She took me running to all things. And back then I was smoking like a trooper, and she had me running over the hills with her, and we talked. And, the day I got out of that treatment centre, which was 5 weeks later, I had a commitment in CA. I had a commitment. I had my sponsor, and I started the 12 steps.
Yeah, amazing.
Ah.
Let's circle back to the questions ever so slightly. So we know what the consequences were like, and you described how you found the rooms,
Yeah.
and how amazing that is and the God moment around that. So our question 4 is going slightly back. At your worst,
Yeah.
because we haven't found out yet how you went back to prison and what happened, but at your worst, did you ever want to die? Did you consider suicide?
No, because I'm too much of a chicken. But for me, I just gave up any hope of ever changing. That's probably where I could say I could relate.
Yeah.
Gave up, just thought, I'm just going to use. And if I die because of using, then it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's probably, yeah.
It's that place that, addicts,
Desperation, isn't it?
yeah, that place that addicts go to where you don't really want to live, you don't really want to die, and you're
In
somewhere
limbo.
in the middle of it. Exactly
Yeah.
right. You're not
Yeah.
neither one nor the other, and it's
Yeah.
it's a really desperate place actually, and the
Yeah.
drugs aren't really working anymore, and you don't really know what to do with yourself.
And you're just using for no reason because it's not doing anything.
yeah.
You just, yeah. So
Absolutely.
for me, it was borderline in that part. Just didn't care anymore.
Yeah. Our question 5, what other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms? So you've done a few geographicals.
Yeah, so obviously with the geographicals, I had a lot of court appearances, and I was given different things. I went to a therapeutic community that was via prison, and that was interesting.
What's that like?
We drew pictures. And then we spoke about how we felt, and we cleaned. So I still don't understand a therapeutic community, but I do know it does work for some people. It does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Which is great.
yeah, it's great because everybody's got their own avenue.
Whatever
which
works.
got them exactly. Also I had drug testing orders where you would be tested twice a week. So you'd go to a center and give them your urine and they'll test it. And this was ordered by the court. I had that. So I think I had one of those where I did it for 18 months and I completed it. The minute I completed it, started drinking. Before I knew it, I was back doing the same thing. So it only worked because of the fact that it had a court order attached to it. No other reason. So stuff like that are those different avenues.
Mm-hmm. Slightly away from the questions, just for a second. How many times did that happen, really, that you needed more money, committed a crime, got nicked, sent to prison, rinse, repeat? Because it sounds like, I mean, just from what you were saying to me in the last sort of 40 minutes, it sounds like it happened quite a few times.
Yeah, I think I had a 9-year gap, would have been from 1992 when I came out until 1999, actually. And I didn't actually get arrested for anything. Still committing crime, just didn't get caught. But from 99 until 2005, I was constantly in and out. I'd be out for 3 months, get nicked again. I'll be in for a year, get out. I never really if I could count my Christmases. So this year will be my 18th Christmas that I've actually had as a free person. And the reason why I know is because the other 18, I was always away for Christmas.
Wow.
So yeah.
The reason why I ask is when I went to share, I've shared in a few prisons and spoken to guys there and about their experience and how baffled. It is something that was so clear that came out, and also speaking to, well, the addicts in there and some of the secretaries as well, is how baffled they are. So often they go out, they come out and they say, all right, I'm not going to do it this time, but then their addiction calls them to do something. They get high or they get drunk and they go into some sort of blackout, and before they know it, they wake up in a police cell and they're in for another 6 months, and they don't really know that cycle that is just part of their addiction,
Yeah, but it's, I guess, because I wasn't really much of a drinker, I've never really experienced a blackout. But what I would say for myself is I've always believed my own lies. So I would be in prison. I would have done, let's just say I've done 6 months. I'm looking well, I'm feeling well, not used anything. What makes me come out and instead of going to the right where my parents are, my family, and my friends that don't do drugs, or veer to the left and go back and see the same people? What makes me change my mind at that instance? And for the best part of it, I'd always come out and go to the right. I'd always go to the right. But all of a sudden, after being on the right side for probably 2 or 3 days, I actually feel quite bored because I didn't have anything to fill that void with. So then all I did was I veered back.
And before you know it, you're back inside.
And before you know it, I'm committing crime and back inside. But what the 12 steps has given me, a design for living that I can navigate around without having to veer to the right. Do you see what I mean? I can just make sure that I'm veering in a straight line.
Yeah.
You see?
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So when you were in rehab and when you first got in touch with the 12 steps and the whole concept of the steps, and that's our question 6, when you came in, did you struggle with the word God?
No. Simply because I grew up as a Catholic. I had a communion at the age of 12. So I already had a concept of God, and it wasn't something that I was scared of. And I remember whenever I was in trouble, I'd always get on my knees in a court cell. Please, God, don't let me get 5. Let me get 2. Please, God, let me get bail. So when I was told, just get on your knees and ask for a clean and sober day, how hard could that be? Because I was desperate enough. I knew there was something bigger than me because I'd seen my friend get clean. I'd seen other people in the meetings get clean. I knew there was something about this that that was bigger than me or everybody else. So all it took was that small mustard seed where I said, you know what, please, I need some help. And that's what I did.
Yeah, amazing. I love the fact that, I also grew up as a Catholic and, had communion, this, that, first communion, this, that, and the other, and all the rest of it. And it was the exact opposite experience. I had a Catholic hangover. I had rejected all of this. I thought it was for other people, and so on and so forth. And, whoever's listened to this pod, just once, will probably know all about it. So no need for me to bang on about it. But still, I just love how we come from, somewhat, religiously speaking, from a very similar background. And yet, for me, it was like, I'm so not having any of this. And you were like, oh, actually, I've been kind of doing this all along. Love that. Amazing. Thank you. Question 7. How do you experience your higher power today?
Okay, so my higher power today, it's unexplainable. So it's something that I know that's deep within. So caring, loving, understanding. When I need to turn to more higher power, doesn't matter where I am. I could be in a crowded train. All I've got to do is just ask. So for me, it's bigger than me. It's very hard to explain.
That's why I asked for an experience rather. The question is, how do you experience your higher power, not how do you explain it? Because you're quite right. You can't explain it.
How do I experience it? I live it. Mm-hmm. That's probably the easiest way to say it. I live it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Question 8. Which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
I'd probably say step 4. Because writing down all the people I was resentful was very easy. But it was when I was getting to my part, looking at my part, that's what I found difficult. And I think, especially when it was my part around harm I've done to my family and stuff like that, that's what I found was really hard, because the more you wrote about it, the more emotions, the more you relived it. So it's like, if I've got 250 resentments, I'm reliving every single one of them. And when I'm getting to my part, I'm understanding the type of person I was. So then that was really the difficult part to swallow at the time. So that's what I would say is the hardest part, is the step 4.
Yeah. I was so unwilling to look at my own part. I felt wronged by this world.
Yeah.
I sort of thought, the world owed me an amend, really, if anything, Do you know what I mean? And so I didn't really think that, and that's why it took me a little while to do my first step 4, not my second one, but my first step 4. It took me quite a little while to do it. I had a bit of step 4 flu to start with and whatnot, because I just thought, actually, I don't really want to, intuitively, I didn't want to, look at my part, and yet it was
and that's the thing, isn't it? It's with the step 4, it's I used to say to my sponsor, why am I feeling so bad? And she just said, because you're reliving every moment, because all your life you've always looked at what people have done to you. So when you're looking at the part that you played in it, that's what's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's what makes you uncomfortable. Yeah, house cleaning. Yeah,
this house cleaning, that as it's often called, and it really makes a lot of sense in a way, doesn't it? It's as if every unpleasant experience that I don't want to deal with, so I sort of put that somewhere in the attic, and then until the ceiling's about to come down, and I have to go up there.
Yeah,
and I have to look at every piece and kind of go, wow, this needs to go there, this needs to go there, this needs to be thrown out. And
you've got to remember, you started the steps. You've done your step 1. You've done your step 2. You've done your step 3. Your step 3, you'll become willing. Yeah. So you're willing to go to any lengths, aren't you? So then that's the uncomfortable part in your step 4. So it would be step 4, and then the other one probably be my step 9.
Mm-hmm. And they are in some way. Well, I don't know whether I can say that, but. For me, they were the most freeing steps in many ways.
Oh.
Certainly at first glance, although I think I'm such a step 3 sucker. I'm just so in love with and in need of, turning to God, turning
The
to
thing is,
higher
we
power.
have to, because I can only speak on my own experience, because I've always listened to Elena as well.
Yeah, right.
Never
Absolutely.
listened to anybody outside myself.
Mm.
So when it was told to me to give it over to God or my higher power or whatever you want to call it, that was an alien concept for me.
Yeah.
But it's also, as you said, also a freeing concept.
Definitely. Thank you, Elena. Question 9. Which character defects give you most trouble?
Today, I'd probably say pride, arrogance at times.
It's like pride on steroids, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It is. Sometimes I forget, and I think I go back to, do you know who I am? And I think, well, who am I?
Who are you?
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this is why inventory is really good for me personally, because it shows me where the defects I need to work on are. So if I'm always suffering with pride, what makes me suffer with that pride? So what do I need to get rid of to ease it? Because in your natural life, your natural journey, everybody in the world, even if they're not in a program, have some sort of pride. But for an addict like me, it goes to the depths of my soul. Do you know what I mean? So it's totally a different,
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you. Question 10. What is the best thing recovery has given you?
freedom. That's what I'd probably say. Not freedom as in locked up freedom. I mean, waking up and not having to go and get a drug to feel normal. That's true freedom. The fact that I don't obsess about using drugs. I don't have an urge using drugs. Do you see what I mean? That is total freedom. Because for 18 years, that's all I had. Obsession, using. So if I'm not using it, I'm obsessing about it. I don't have that today. So that's truth. So that's, for me, that's true freedom. Everything else that comes with being in recovery is great, but that's the main thing for me.
And then I suppose by definition also the outer freedom, so the inner freedom leading to outer freedom, because of course if you're not using, you're not in prison. If you're not,
And I'm actually a member of society. So it's,
That's great.
Great.
Question 11. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
I would say, give it a go. Because come into the rooms, see if you are an addict, because you will get people who, as I've said in my story already, you will get people who are actually hard users, but given sufficient reason, they are able to stop and manage their life. So I would suggest you find out if you are an addict. And if you are an addict, like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous states, come to meetings, reach out, and work the steps.
Great. And of course, if you aren't, then nothing's lost.
And if you're not, then you can come to a few meetings. You can listen, and it could be a self-help group for you. And you could do a couple of meetings, like I know people have done, and they can go off and live their lives, and they're absolutely fine.
I had this one particular instance where a friend was very concerned about her husband, who, quite a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
Right? And he was going through a tough time and was looking also at, his alcohol use and things. And she said, would you take him to a meeting? I said, yeah, of course, so I took him to a meeting. He sat there, listened really intently. He was quite humble, really, and I thought, actually, I don't know why, because just some guesswork. I thought, the way he's listening and things, you sort of glance over and he seemed to be really attached to it. And I go, maybe we've got something here, And afterwards he came, he thanked me profusely, spoke to a few people and said, "You guys are great. This is so brilliant. But I just don't know what you're talking about. This isn't me."
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Great, but nothing's lost, no harm done, right? If you come into the rooms to find out you're not an addict, well, okay, great, it's
but the
not
main
going to
thing
bite
is
you. There's no risk.
Exactly. It's just about giving it a try, finding out for yourself, because nobody can diagnose you as an addict. Only you can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And of course, that is what makes this illness so incredibly weird and complicated.
Cunning, baffling, and powerful.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Because usually if you get a diagnosis, there'd be like a man or a woman in a white coat, holding up some test results and say, "Look, here is your illness. There it is," right? That is often the case anyway, but with what we have, it really isn't.
You can't. And if you get a diagnosis from a doctor, what they do is they give you a prescription, and that prescription fixes it. So there's nothing that they can give an addict that can fix our obsession to use, because
that's right.
the problem always starts in your mind before the actual using or drinking or whatever it is.
And our last question, question 12. What do you want your higher power to say to you at the pearly gates when you die?
You've done all right, Elena. You've done all right.
That's great.
That's it. You've done all right. That's it. There's no fancy, profound speech. You've just done all right. This was the way that your life was supposed to be, because where you are today is where you're meant to be.
Simple as. Brilliant. You've been so brilliant. Love the way how, you're able to just focus and concentrate your message, and your experience, your strength, your hope, into really clear-cut sentences that just state things the way they are. It's really, really brilliant. You've been really, really open and really generous in your share. It's really, really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for being my guest on 12 Steps and 12 Questions. We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-step recovery program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific. It's fully self-supporting and not for profit. And this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.